Hello, and thank you again for another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. So today, who I'm talking to, I'm actually really interested because of the synchronicity. And what I mean by that is that, people that I talk to, I usually ask them, "Hey, you're pretty interesting. Who else interesting do you know that I could talk to?" And well, this lady, Laura Madison, came up. And I had reached out to her, and it was serendipitous because she had been thinking about, hey, how do I expand my ability to, go out and talk? And well, if that's not an account of manifestation, I don't know what is. And I just want to see what happens, right, with this conversation. Again, my modus operandi is to really just let it go where it goes. I find most people interesting. That's something I got from Jordan Peterson. If you don't find somebody interesting, you're probably not listening hard enough. And I want to be present and listen and see what sort of hidden gems we have for you today. Sound good? As always, hey, if you like the content, like and subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you liked. Let me know maybe where I lost you. And so that way I can, take in that feedback and see what I can do. Sound great? Awesome. Laura, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Guys, everyone, this is Laura Madison. She is an elite mentorship trainer. She has her own business, Transformational Life by Laura. And I was mentioning before, Laura, how interesting this is that I like to ask people who I interview on this podcast or talk to, I guess, hey, who's somebody else interesting I should talk to? And your name came up. And then it seemed like you were in a place where you're like, hey, I would like to actually be able to speak more long form on podcasts or however. And I found that very funny. And it's great. What is it? Constantly amazed, never surprised, right? Great. The synchronicities.
Yes, yes, that's Peter saying.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, Laura. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about Transformational Life by Laura, and then let's go from there.
Okay, so I am from Michigan and have been here most of my life. Um, have three beautiful children and 10 grandchildren. I had another that passed away, and which was a journey in itself. Uh, my business is brand new, and the way that I really moved into it was because of EMF. I knew I wanted to be a life coach for some time. And about 3 months into EMF, I thought, a life coach is great, but this is really what I want to teach.
Mm.
So my business, I just started in January. And so we're just getting off the ground, and I'm excited for what's going to happen next.
Okay, that's awesome. And what really inspired you to go out into business, for yourself?
Mainly because I want to have the freedom of working when I want to work and helping people. I really want to help people get through their journey with a
Mm.
bit less tumultuous times than I've gone through. So that's been really my inspiration, as my own life has been my inspiration for. I really want to help others not struggle and go through all of the things that I did in order to
Mm.
get to where I am.
Okay, so kind of learn from my bumps and bruises, learn from my mistakes, and that way you can be a little bit more advanced with an awareness that I didn't have at the time. Does that sound fair?
Yes, it's a bit more than that, because EMF is completely transformational in every area of your life.
Yeah.
And where I started from when I first heard about Peter was 2 years ago,
Mm.
on a summit. And I started with his first program was USM, and then I moved into the EMF, and then I moved into the trainer. But where I started from was I was living each day just to get to the next one, to get one day closer to death. I wasn't suicidal at that point, but I was not living either. And I really want to be able to be a tool that
Mm.
people can use, that so they don't have to live that way, so that they know that they have it within themselves to not be living day to day and just waiting for that last day.
And what do you think that is that inspires you to do that?
Um, I think it's always been there. I think that from a child, one of the things was that I knew there was something greater than what I was seeing.
Mm,
And whatever that was, it was enormous and unlimited and amazing. And I just feel that that's where my true inspiration comes from, is the universe, from God, source, whatever your label you want to put on that. That's where my inspiration comes from. That's where it comes. It's deep inside me. It's not,
sure.
I can't say one thing. So
Okay. And so, even if you couldn't necessarily point to it as a kid, you just felt it deep inside that you wanted
mhm.
to help out. Is that because you kind of had to deal with your own tumultuous journey, and you'd rather others not, even from a young age, you had to deal with that? Or is it just regardless of, even though you had a happy life, still just want to help protect people?
No, I remember being 7 years old and being in my closet and crying that nobody loved me.
Oh,
And so my journey started back then, as far as the the mental anguish
hmm,
that I was feeling. And I got stuck in that. So even as an adult, I was still stuck in that place. So that's, yeah, it started back then because it was rough for me. And it wasn't necessarily that um, my life itself was terribly rough. To me, it was.
sure.
So I have a story, if you don't mind me sharing
Yeah,
it.
by all means.
So my sister, as an adult, I was talking to my sister and we had a conversation about, I felt my mom didn't love me. And the situation was, I was explaining to her what the situation was. And she's like, my mom would sweep, and she swept like the devil was coming in or something. And we lived where there was sand. And no matter where I went, it seemed she swept my way and the sand would hit my legs and it hurt. My sister said, well, yeah, she said, I just figured I was in the wrong place. So, our reality, each person's reality is different.
Hmm.
We see things completely different. So, where I felt that my childhood was torturous, my sister did not have that same experience. For her, it was something different. And I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. But I saw things as traumatic for me.
Hmm.
So, but for someone else, it may not have been.
So I love
And
what you just spelled
yeah,
out with your with you and your sister, because it perfectly, like near total perfection, describes this idea in the Tao Te Ching, that if you give evil nothing to resist, it'll go away on its own, not because it's not
mhm.
there, but because you can step out of the way.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's literally what your sister did, but you
yeah,
sat there and resisted, it sounded like. And then I certainly have resisted when I shouldn't have, and made my life far more tumultuous than it needed to be. And so I'm very well aware of how we, create and manifest our reality. A lot of that's around some really weird rules that we create around our ideas of, happiness, what we run from, what we run towards. And that's fascinating. It's fascinating that the exact same thing can happen to blood relatives, right? And
mhm.
such a radically different response, and how one will likely make your life a lot easier and one will likely make your life a lot harder.
Yeah, yeah. I did move, but it just seemed like wherever I went, my mom swept that way. My sister must have had a better understanding of which way my mom was going to sweep. I don't know.
That's funny.
But yeah, so absolutely. I wholeheartedly see that. And I didn't see that until I was a much older adult. I didn't see that my reality wasn't the same as everyone else's. It took me, I was probably in my 30s or 40s by the time I realized what I saw was not the truth. We
Mm,
think that what we are experiencing, what we see is the truth. And once you realize that your truth is not necessarily true, then you can really work on your perception of what life is.
Yeah. I was actually just having a conversation about that with my brother. And he, this is over Facebook Messenger. So like, I don't have a very well articulated argument other than he feels like there's this idea of the truth. And if you break away from the truth, the idea that, Spider-Man and Superman, he asked me based upon, just some ideas I was running past him, people write about Spider-Man and Superman, but is that evidence of them being real? And I said, well, no, it's not evidence of them being real, but it's evidence that I can read it. I can read a good story, and there's evidence that there's been powerful implications from it. And so even if it's not a real story, it becomes real, it becomes more than real, because it can tap to the deepest levels of who we are. And I don't think he agreed with that nor liked it, which isn't my point. It was just kind of a fun conversation to have. Wasn't trying to prove myself, but I like not just the idea that we manifest our reality, that we shape our reality, we define it and create it, but the fact that somebody else can create a reality within that reality, a comic book, a movie, right, a TV show or something, and we can watch that and be really struck to the heart, right, and really moved, because it speaks parabolically, and it speaks in stories and in narrative. And for so long, that's how we've passed, information on. And when we take the time to actually talk to somebody in a way in which they're important and meaningful, well, it can be really moving. And so, and really, that's probably much more important than what we have to say, is really how we say it, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it depends on the receiver.
Yeah.
Are they listening, and what is their background story? So what you tell them may come out as something totally different.
Mm.
That's why you and your brother can see the same thing, and he's got a story and you have a different
Yeah. Yep.
one. Yeah.
For sure. And so how long have you been a trainer? You said you started at USM, and then I guess before you get to a trainer, USM. So did you go through the whole 52 weeks? And for those who don't know, it's ultimate self-mastery. But anyway, go ahead.
I did not. I did not. I got, I was working with another mentor,
Mm-hmm.
the lovely Sharon Lecter, on financing. And she started talking, and I was going through a course of hers, and she started talking about having accountability people. And I started looking at my life, and I'm like, well, who do I have in my life that it can mentor me on these things? Who do I have that can support me, or, just be there and help me move to my next step in each of these areas? And she had about, I want to say 14. It might not have been that many, but there were a lot. And I didn't have those people because I've been very much to myself. And so I had talked to somebody about EMF, and I had told them, I can't do this. I can't afford it. I just can't do this. And after about 2 weeks, and I really am looking at this other course, I realized I have to have this. I
Mm-hmm.
have to make this happen. I have to be able to go through this course, because I need these people. I need these people so I don't keep living one day to the next to get to death.
Yep.
So that is where I really came in, and that's how I got in there. So I did about 8 weeks of the USM
Mm-hmm.
before I joined EMF. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I can still go back and go through them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's tidbits in there, because Peter's brilliant that way, that are not in other courses that I've seen. But it's still at my disposal, so I can do that. But I'm too busy going back over EMF again and
Yeah.
again. So
Yep.
yeah,
So what cohort number were you in?
13.
13. Okay. Oh, that's right. The great Eric Brox, right? He was my community manager. Man, that guy's awesome. I like that guy
Yeah.
a
So
lot.
what one were you in?
I was 17. And so
17.
my journey was a little bit different. I kind of asked myself similar questions, but again, more in a narrative, more in a story. And I tuned into Jordan Peterson a lot. And he told me I should create the greatest ideal of goodness of which I can conceive. And so I did. And here I am, which was fascinating because it was all around Gandalf. Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings movies, where this dude that goes around hanging out with these hobbits, not because they're building castles, not because they're paving these roads, but because or building the next war machine, because they're just like, they love to enjoy life. He can feel the goodness coming off of them. In fact, that's actually why Frodo was so resilient to the ring, right? The story goes, the lore goes, and so he was drawn to that. And not just drawn to that, but then he left them feeling like better people, because now here's this wizard, Gandalf, right? Like, here's this dude that they've seen a lot and they're freaking out and they love him. And also somebody who's magical. And so that led me to Peter Sage by way of Sad Guru, actually. And, I remember, so I never even heard of Peter Sage until April of last year. And then, which is 2022. And I started doing a deep dive in his straight talks, and went on a road trip and listened to a bunch, while I was doing that as well. And it was fascinating. It really sucked me in. And that was when, when I first heard of Peter, I joined the program pretty much. Like 3 hours of webinars later, I'm joining the program, and I felt like somebody came back in time. Like I came back in time and said, "Hey man, you can be like me, right? You can be like this." And I was like, "Ooh." And so I joined, and then it was 2 months later I met Ed Stracher, and then learned from Ed. I don't know how much you know about Ed, but spirituality wasn't really the biggest concern in my life. And then I wrote about my greatest ideal of goodness, as if I would achieve that, like I would become worthy of it by becoming it. And then I learned from the great master Peter Sage, and then learned from the great master Ed Stracher on how to be a spiritual healer. And so my life took a lot of turns, and accelerated exponentially when I met Peter. It's insane. I feel like I've packed like 3 years into 1 year. It's really strange. I don't really know how that happens, I guess, other than I did such a deep dive in self-discovery that I'm like leapfrogging, it seems, into new timelines. But yeah, what has been your experience throughout this whole thing?
A lot like what you said. It does feel like you are moving forward so quickly. For me, I felt so stuck though. So I felt like my emotional maturity
Mm-hmm.
was back in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and it took a toll on my family and my marriage and myself, obviously. But going through EMF just definitely, I am amazed every day at how I handle something,
Mm-hmm.
at how I look at something, how when something comes up to me, I turn it over in my mind versus just my initial thought might be something negative, might be, oh, and almost instantly it flips around to this is for my good.
Mm.
So what am I learning here? How, and on, in a fraction of a second, you go from frustration or sadness or some type of pain into joy.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge. And that is what I have gotten from Peter. That's what I've gotten from EMF. Besides the family and the peer group, it's just completely a different way of living.
that's awesome. I love that. And now you're able to actually take others through that same journey, right? As a trainer.
Yes. Yep. I am. And I'm my first cohort, I'm doing it with another EMT, and we are starting in April. So we're excited about that.
Nice.
But that will be our first cohort that we do.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I wonder if I know them. Who's your partner in crime here?
Jeanette Lindsay.
Okay, maybe not. All right. So
She
I'm
was she actually was a community manager for EMF 18.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, it's well, and what I like about our community, right? When I say community, right, our alumni community, I think there's like 1,000 people plus in the Facebook group. But we're some of the most interesting people in the world. And I don't say that to, right, the poll from Peter, I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you, right? The level of how interesting you can be when you actually find the right tools to ask the correct to ask better questions, not necessarily the correct questions, but ask better questions in order to arrive at a better destination. and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I don't know if you found this or not, but people are from all different walks of life and have so many different talents and bring so much to the table, and everyone is so supportive. My group, I could reach out to any one of them if I had a problem, and I know they'd be there for me. And Eric is one of those people. He's just amazing. Um, but there's a whole lot of us. We actually had 25 of us go to Tenerife. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, there were 25 of us in Tenerife. And it was a big, if you saw somebody and they said they were from EMF,
Mhm.
you got a hug. You
Oh
would
yeah,
hug, and you
100%.
didn't even need
Yeah.
to know who they were. If they said EMF, you were hugging them. And it's just the love and the cohesiveness of everyone, the acceptance of no matter where you are, what you've done, or how you present yourself. It's yeah, everyone is truly amazing, wonderful individuals.
Well, and what a nice person to have in your corner to hold you accountable, right? A lovely person
Mhm.
that actually wants your benefit. I've played with
Right.
this idea that America, Americans really fetishize this idea of I'm my own worst critic. Don't you know? Like I should be proud of that. I should be proud of the fact that I kneecap myself before I run a race. Right. I should be
Right.
proud of myself that I try to tear myself down. And then is it surprising that life and their bodies are falling apart when they treat themselves as like an enemy to life?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And it's so true, that we hear that, and people just like workaholics. Oh, I work all the time. That's not good for you. And
Yeah.
that's not what life's about. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, you got your first cohort coming up soon, which is great. Butterflies?
Um, just the technical part of it, I think, is more butterflies for me. Getting people into the cohort is more butterflies for me.
Mm,
I am working with another EMT right now, and I'm a community manager for her group. So I've had some days where she's been traveling, and I have done the community calls by myself. And it
facilitating. Hmm.
yes, and it works out quite beautifully. Might get a little butterflies to start with. Oh my gosh, what are we going to talk about? How am I going to
Hmm.
keep them, engaged, all of that. It just flows though. Once
Yep.
you ask the question, and get people started, and you've created a group of people that know that they can be vulnerable,
Hmm.
because that's where we grow, and our
Yep.
vulnerability is where we grow.
Yep.
And because I am very open about myself, if I've learned that if people are a little hesitant to share, I share something,
Oh,
and that will get people, they will see that the space is safe.
yep.
And that's a huge thing. So I don't have a lot of butterflies. I'm good at talking. I'm good at being open about what I've gone through. And that really helps. Also, you know, I love what Peter says. You can't get it wrong. You can only learn, right?
Yeah.
So if I do something and it doesn't work out exactly the way that I had hoped, it's a lesson. It's
Yeah.
not a failure, it's a lesson. That's another huge thing that I've taken from EMF is you're not failing. If you're trying and it doesn't work out, you're learning.
Yep. Well, and rare is the
So
person who's willing to step out. Most people are like, well, I got to get all my ducks in a row. It's like, well, ducks don't just align themselves in a row, right? A duck has to step out first and start walking. And guess what? All the rest of them ducks start walking right behind him
right,
or her, right?
right.
And so I love that. And the thing is you obviously know the material. You've been a community manager, so you've been able to reinforce the material in the capacity of a facilitator or co-facilitator, and then you've had the opportunities to actually step in the actual facilitator role, and yeah, that's brilliant because then as we have this chance to tell other people what it means to us and we share, well then it gives them that permission basically is what you're giving them to share themselves and to share their own vulnerabilities. And that's really when we start learning. When we start talking about, hey, I actually noticed when I did this, I applied it, I applied the knowledge in this way, and this is what happened, and I got the feel goods, and wow, oh my God, this is what happened as a result, and this is what I'm seeing in my life. And there's something magical there. And to see that in the eyes of a student, right, where you're now the mentor and they're now the mentee, right, that's got to be pretty rewarding.
It is, but one of the things that I've really found is that I also learn a lot from the mentee.
Mm-hmm.
There's, the cohort that I'm helping with right now, they are learning a lot, but they also bring a lot to the table. And I think that that's part of the beauty of EMF. Like we were saying earlier, each person has their thing that they're bringing to the table. And the people that are coming to EMF are not, they're led there. They are coming because that's where they want to go, or that's something that they're being drawn to. So they're already on that path.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to drag in people off the street that have no interest in finding a better way for themselves. So that makes it a lot easier too. And then you learn from them as well.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful relationship. It really is. The whole process is a beautiful relationship.
Well, and having that feedback loop where even the mentor can learn is wonderful, because then you can learn things that you can then implement into your next cohort and your next cohort, because, just interacting with more humans that are playing with these ideas give us a new way in which to look at, at a potential problem, which then would allow us to be in a position to serve others in a little bit, better way, which again only makes, us better. And yeah, what a cool what a cool and interesting life. And so let's see, that's April, and then October will be the end of that. Do you do one cohort at a time? I mean, you could probably easily do multiple cohorts.
So they recommend that you have kind of like two going at a time.
Yeah.
So uh, I'm sure Laz.
Mm-hmm.
Laz is our coach, and he says 3 a year. So once you're in your first cohort, you start working on building your
Second.
following for your
Mm-hmm.
next cohort, and so they kind of overlap each other.
Well, and that would be a great way to keep all the information fresh too. And like as a trainer, I mean, if you're going over this stuff all the time, because I suspect that there's some amount of researching the modules again. I mean, I'm sure it's all in there, but still kind of brushing up on them again. And just to have the benefit of doing that a lot and cogent, and then playing with ideas with other people and seeing the cross collaboration and where it goes, that's going to be very powerful.
It is very powerful. And going through the modules, because I like to go through the module right when they're going through the module. And of course, I've
Mm-hmm.
done it before. And also my EMF is going through it as well. My EMF 13
Yep.
is going through it as well. So I'm going through it with them again. I'm going through it with this class. And the beauty of it is, because you're a different person each time you read it, even if you read it 5 minutes ago, you're not that same person. Some more information has been fed into you and you've processed it. And so you are not the same. So once you read it again, you gain more from
Mm.
it. You see another piece of it. And that's another one of the beauties of the cohorts, is when people are sharing their thoughts about, how they've applied this to their life, or how it has affected their life, or where in their life this fits in. They may have a whole different understanding of it than what you have yourself. And so you can see that. And that's part of gaining that information too. So then you see how each piece of the modules, if you didn't catch it, somebody else did. And maybe that puts a whole different spin on it. Peter
Mm.
says when he goes over his stuffs, he takes notes because he wrote this stuff when he was getting downloads from the universe.
Yep.
So there's so much magic in there that you can't help but keep growing as long as you're going over the information again and again. Yeah.
I like that. Well, and like you said, we show up as different people, and since we're different people, we can learn to a deeper degree. I mean, I can go back and watch movies again and see a lot more in it, and oh, okay, not just be observant of things that are in the background, but then invite the new philosophy that I've now gathered, at this stage of my life, compared to where I was before. And yeah, that's really cool. And the idea of repetition, I mean, that only makes sense. There's songs that I can sing now and know most, if not all, the words to, that I may not have heard, even like within the last decade, because the
Right.
repetition builds it in. And when we build in what's really good for us and build in what can really help elevate us, and not necessarily what's right, not necessarily what's not wrong, but what's good for us, what's productive for us, well, we'll find ourselves in a very much more productive space. And I think ultimately that's where people are trying to aim, and helping others get to a more productive space without moralizing it, without politicizing it. I mean, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. I mean, like, there's been times, all of us are, tearing up, or, just sharing a lot of things from the heart, and nobody really cares. Nobody stops, like, well, hold on. That was really moving, but who did you vote for? Before I potentially cry, who did you vote for? Right.
Right.
And I love that nobody cares. Like, it doesn't really even come up. Nobody gives a shit. We're there to make ourselves better, and be better, and show others how to be better, and live our own truth in the best that we can, while trying to build up our community at the same time, which gives us a certain responsibility to them, and then helps us become accountable to people who actually care about us the most, in a certain respect, right? And
Mhm.
Yeah, that's also a very beautiful gift to be able to give people, and to have that, and to have those modules for life. I mean, to go through and learn, and yeah, I mean, incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that you were talking about that brings up something for me is, even when we're around people that are not on this journey, I've noticed I um, get a promotion at work that I didn't, they made a position to give me a promotion.
Hmm.
And I think that's all because of EMF, because of how I changed. So now I am actually able to manage. I'm assistant director. So with my staff, I have noticed that my consciousness
Hmm.
has raised the consciousness of people around me. Some of them, most of them have come along. Most of them have changed, and the atmosphere is lighter. It's, more enjoyable to work there. It's not a place of dread. There's more joy there. And because I'm coming from a place of more love, it's I'm able to help others get to that place. I'm encouraging more. So just raising your consciousness raises the consciousness of people around you. And then you think about it, and what's that ripple effect? How are they going home? How are they interacting with other people within the company? How are they acting with, when they're on the road, or when they're talking to somebody at a store? So what we're doing, because Peter's his mission is to raise global consciousness.
Hmm.
And when ours is raised, it raises other people's. And it's just an amazing thing to see, especially when it's somebody that you're around often. You can see that. I can see it in my grandchildren. Since I've gone through EMF, because I told you I have 10, since I've gone through EMF, I have two that asked to come and stay with me. Nobody was asking to come and stay with me before,
Oh.
and so they see that, and it's affecting their lives, and it's going to make them better people,
Mm.
because I've allowed myself to become better. It's going to make them better people. And that is so inspiring to me, to then want to get even more into this. It just makes you hungry. You can help other people just by being better yourself. It's amazing. I'm probably going to cry.
Oh,
So,
well, and to share something, not necessarily helping, people in a community other than, right, my own community, like my family. Interestingly
mhm.
enough, it's helped me deal with, my, and have a better relationship with my son. So he's 10, And I picked him up the other day, and he had a sugar attack. I mean, somebody was leaving, so they brought cinnamon rolls. Somebody's birthday, so they brought donuts. They were celebrating they put on a musical number, and they were celebrating the successful, deployment of that. And so somebody else brought something, and yeah, I think there was like another thing that he had, like 4 sources of sugar, and so he's dropping now, right? And so he's crashing as I'm picking him up. And instead of going straight home, took him to Costco. And Costco is just like one of those, like, meh, whatever. It's like, of course I go, like, yay. But since it wasn't where he thought he was going home. We didn't talk about it. I didn't tell him, though, note to self, I should probably tell him before. I just didn't want to, I knew it was going to turn into a fight. But we went, he got mad. He's got this new watch now where he can call people. His mom is one of them. And because I'm taking him to the store, now I'm a terrible human being, right? I'm worst father of the year. And oh my God, I don't want to, I don't want to spend the weekend with this maniac, right? This monster. And I could look back at a time where, before I had that race consciousness that you're talking about, I would have just like yelled at him, like, and just forced him to grab his arm, maybe yank him out of the car, not in a way where he's like, physically hurt, but in a way it's like, dude, I ain't taking no shit. Let's go now. And it's going to make him cry, but he'll get over it. But what I ended up doing is, it took a little bit longer than I would have preferred, but I did let him know in no uncertain terms that, one, I deserve respect. Two, think of everything that you've asked me for already. And now look at the way that you're acting. You've already asked me for a bunch of stuff. And now look at the way you're acting. Does that sound like a kid who's going to get that stuff that he's asking for? And you could tell that he didn't want to give in, but eventually it started giving in, and it started making sense. And having that race consciousness also helps me get over the fact when he's been outrageously over the top. And because when he lets it go and wants to become a different person, I don't need to reel him back in and like, don't you remember, when you were being a little turd, right? I can, start, talking to him and enjoying. If he wants to race a little bit, we can race, if there's nobody in the aisle. But try to have fun and then start bringing up, hey man, let's talk about your behavior a little bit. But that way it's more fun to be around me. I'm not just this punitive leader. And I was able to do that. In part, also, what's interesting is going through the modules again. We're going through and we are looking at and dissecting our psychology. Hey, what are our towards values, right? What are the values we move towards? What are the values that we move away from? And so that was what was most present in my mind as far as a module to pull from, because it's the most fresh. And so I try to use that on my own values, right? Well, here's an apple from my tree. Okay, well, what would you want, Josh? Right? Let's start treating you the way that you would have liked to be treated. Let's see how that works. And let's see if there's something that you can learn from that, from dissecting your own psychology to learn, right? Change yourself and you change the world. And it's even little things like that, little things where, kids just want to fight over everything. I can now, where before it may have been a 30-minute, 45-minute argument, usually within 5 minutes, I can get him smiling again and like, we're over it. Not always, but usually.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't you love that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, I've used that quite a bit. I have a granddaughter who, for whatever reason, can be very touchy. And sometimes she's the youngest granddaughter. And sometimes I will just hug her. She'll be having her meltdown, whatever it is. And I will go into, I don't know, a different state and just be completely love with her and just hug her. Whatever she said, whatever she's doing, the anger doesn't come out. Like you were saying, okay, I don't need the anger. It doesn't help the situation. And she's going through something. This isn't about me right now. This isn't about she hates me. She's feeling one of her one of her needs is not being met. One of her 6 needs is not being met. So what is it? So I will get her on my lap and I'll hug her, and she just turned 8. So, they start getting to, no, I don't want you to hold me. I don't want you to, whatever.
Mm.
but they really do.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, she does. They don't all, but she really does want that soft, gentle, loving attention, and somebody to just ask, what is it that you're feeling? What's going on with you right now? How can I help you? How can we still get to where we need to go, but in a way that's okay for you? Because I'm not going to, like you're not going to give in. You're not going to say, well, yeah, you can keep acting this way.
Right.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying there's a better way to get them to understand this is what has to happen, but I am acknowledging what's going on with you. And again, just as this has been through EMF. My children, they're like, that is not the woman I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, and I'm blessed to be able to have a young child, right? He's 10, and now I'm going through this. And granted, even though he doesn't live with me, I take him to school a couple days a week and then have him every other weekend. It still, my interactions are very chill. I'm able to help him calm down. I'm able to help him kind of just share, his thoughts, and allow him to be him. And that way I can actually examine him in his natural attitude and natural state, and then help him in whatever way I can by steering his mind through my questions in a better direction. And as we both learned, right, we're all programmable by design, right? We don't get to choose that, but we can choose how we are programmed. And if I can start instilling and installing even better programming for him to lean upon and to utilize in his life, well, hey, what sort of karmatic effect would I have there if I can, instead of sending into the world somebody who's relatively useless and weak and very sensitive, into the world somebody who's very useful and resourceful, who's strong and is not thin-skinned, right? I mean, that's a radically different person.
Yes. Yes. Because at least for me, I didn't become the mom that I was without examples,
Mm-hmm.
So to have the tools now to be that parent, grandparent, because I use it with my children as well. We are in turn, without them going through EMF, which I would love everybody to go through, but without my children going through it or my grandchildren going through it, they are getting benefit from it because of the way that I now interact with them. So the better that I become, the better they can become, and the more equipped they are to deal with what life has for them.
And do
So,
you think it's fair to look at that change in your life and call that effectively a spiritual experience and an ongoing spiritual experience?
oh, 100%, 100%. I grew up in a very religious family, and that's part of where I had issues. Um, it was extremely strict. Some of it just didn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely went away from it. But I knew there was something bigger. I knew that there was something. And that's why I call it universe. I can also see calling it God and source. There's something bigger. So I knew that. But religion just didn't seem right to me. And um, being able to find that it is spiritual is such a release for me, as far as now it makes sense, now I get it, now this I am not a hellion that was a teenager and was rebellious and all that wasn't me. That was me saying this system sucks. I
Yeah.
can't go with this program. And now I found out the program wasn't right in the first place. And so and now I get to create what my reality is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's
So
interesting is, as a teenager, chances are we're not doing things the best, most productive way. And so in many ways, right, wrong programming and wrong program, right? Us, right, running in a wrong. And so that's what makes things worse. Because even in a place that's got, maybe the bad program running or the bad programming going, Peter himself spent time in Pentonville. And while I'm sure that there were times where his, vibration was pulled pretty low, overall his average, it seems like he was able to keep it pretty high. He was able to write very inspirational things. I mean, that freaking book right there just, came out of it.
Mhm.
And and so there is a certain impetus for us to step up, because even when the code is bad, we seem to be able to maybe help reprogram the system just by interacting with people in a different way, in a more advanced way. Not advanced at look how smart I am and how highfalutin my
Right.
vernacular is, but just in my advanced way, that I don't need to demand that I'm right and begrudge you if I'm wrong, right? How dare you prove me wrong? Like, what? Like, I was just trying to be right, just like you, right? But we, no longer having to take things as insults, but to be free to be who we are and accept others so that they can also be given the gift to feel free to be who they are.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very beautiful thing to have happen as well. I like what you said about taking it. Um, sorry.
You're fine.
I believe that people are always telling the truth. I tell my staff that they're lying. They're not lying. They're not lying. They're telling it the way that they see it. In their mind, they are telling you the truth, whether it's what the rest of the world sees or not. When they have their heels dug in and they're telling you something, they're telling you from their perspective, they're telling you from their reality, they're telling you the truth as they see it. And when you look at it like that, it is a lot easier to not judge other people and not say, I'm right, you're wrong, because each of us have our own reality, same as we each taste things differently and we
Mhm.
each see colors differently. When you realize that even our scientific bodies are that specific to us, how can reality be the same for each of us? How can truth be the same for each of us? So once you start looking at that, it's a lot easier to handle other people by knowing you don't have all the answers. Your reality is not theirs.
Mhm.
Your feelings are not the same thing that they're feeling. Now, do we feel often the same way and in the same situation? Oh, yes, because we're human. But if somebody else feels a different way going through the same thing, doesn't mean that they're wrong, doesn't mean that your way is right. It just is my way or it's their way, and it's okay. And so, yeah, I love what you just said. That's absolutely true.
Well, and I like the way that you reframe that, because, let's say that somebody does know they're lying, right? Well, the truth in which they're so vehemently, announcing to the world is the only truth they're willing to accept at that moment. So whether they know they're lying or not, it's still the truth as they see it, because it's the only one they're willing to accept at that time.
Mhm.
And often true really only comes down to the level of awareness we have, that we can actually see what's going on. And then, a famous physicist that Peter likes to quote, which, like, I've been quoting this fool for years. And this is another reason why I felt like Peter had, come back in time and like, hey man, you too can be like this. But Niels Bohr said that, the opposite of a correct statement is a false statement, but the opposite of a profound truth may well be another profound truth. And so sometimes what we see as true, just because we advance, doesn't mean that it makes that untrue. It was true for us to be able to get to that next stage, and that's what we needed.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that our life was a falsehood. Doesn't mean that we need to denounce everything that led up to that, because then we're being untrue to ourselves, right? Because it took that journey. It took what we went through in order to get here,
Mhm.
because we got here at this point. And so literally we can look back and think, no, it literally took this journey to get here, right? Yeah, it would have been nice to maybe get here faster, but we don't get to choose that. We did well, we do. We don't get to choose that after the fact, because we do get to
Right.
choose our journey. We just don't necessarily realize that we're choosing it in advance of seeing it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Very true.
And what is there a maybe a most meaningful or particular part of your life that you feel has most benefited from meeting Peter Sage, going through all this stuff? When I've seen your picture with him, right? Is that right? Did I see your picture with him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's on my Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, did I misremember that? And so, yeah, is there maybe if you could, if somebody forced you into just a very short one sentence thing to say, and that somebody maybe being me, maybe on this podcast, maybe at this time, right? Hypothetically, right? Of course. Is there any one benefit that you found that kind of supersedes most of the others, or rather, the others kind of play a bigger part of that meta theme?
What others? The others.
Just
Oh,
whatever other benefits that
the
you've received, because there's probably a lot of benefit you've received. But is there maybe one main meta theme, one main meta area that he helped that all the others are kind of connected to?
I would say that for me, I have control of how I look at things. And that's where I have control.
Mm,
I used to try to control everything around me. And the control you have is how you handle what's going on around you, what
mm.
comes your way, how do you handle that? So he gave me certainty that I can handle whatever happens.
Well, and hands on the wheel or hands not on the wheel, that is a radically different life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I like that. And what's so interesting is that one would think, well, wouldn't control mean your hands are on the wheel? Well, no, actually. When you try to control what's coming in, we don't get to control the outside world. And so try to control your car when your hands aren't on the wheel. So your life actually goes out of control the more you try to control it. And the more that you guide it and allow it, the more it seems that the synchronicities in life start sparking and things really just start coming your way.
So I have a really great story to go with that. I
Yeah.
drive a Mustang and I live in Michigan
Mm-hmm.
and I drive it year round. And the reason I don't crash and the reason that I can drive it in the wintertime is that I know when to take my hands off the wheel.
Mm.
If it's starting to slip, you don't like, okay, God, take the wheel. You don't do that, but you just you have to stop trying to steer. You have to stop trying to control it. You have to take your foot off the brake, as weird as that may seem to people. You can't give it gas. You can't try to stop it. It's not going to stop until it's ready to stop.
Mm-hmm.
You take your hands off because you'll oversteer. You take your foot off the brake and you wait. You'll know when the right moment is to put them back on there, but that's exactly what you were saying. You might sound crazy. Take your hands off the wheel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Take your foot off the brake.
Well, and when it's necessary, and that's a form of surrendering,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when it's necessary, certainly you can't drive, a long road trip that way, but that's a form of understanding true control,
Mm-hmm.
when to know that you don't have control and when to allow it to happen. And so that way you don't make things worse. And that's a very interesting nuance that you bring up. I like that. And Michigan. I actually had a really good friend of mine lived in Ferndale. You ever heard of Ferndale?
Yes.
Yeah, he worked out of Livonia. You ever been to Livonia?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, so he was a tattooist at oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. Oh well. Eternal Tattoo. Yeah, Trent Thompson, man, that guy was awesome. That guy was I met him playing World of Warcraft, and this is so long ago, back in 2004. Just got out of the army, playing World of Warcraft, meet this dude who's super cool. He's got a Mastiff dog. I've got a Great Dane. So I'd go on a road trip from Indianapolis up there, go visit him, and bring my dog, which was comical because I drove a Honda Civic with a Great Dane in it, and in the back, taking up the entire back seat. And she would have such a fun time with that Mastiff. I mean, we'd go out and have our fun, and we'd come home, we see like tufts of hair and puddles of spittle, and both the dogs lying on the ground and tongues all lolled out. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So Michigan holds a warm place in my heart, and it's also the only place I've ever seen black squirrels. Never seen a black squirrel anywhere but when I was uh, snooping around in Ferndale.
Yeah. Yeah. They
Yeah.
don't tend to be in the city, which is where I am, but I grew up in the country. So if you ever get over here to Michigan, you're more than welcome to hang out.
Oh,
I got
nice.
a
That'd be
room.
awesome. Right. Hang out at the
And you know
Madison
what?
Inn, huh?
And yeah, and that's one of the things that you find with EMF. You can travel to any place in the world just about. If you've got somebody there, they got a room for you or a bed or a couch or something. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
Well, and that's something I hope to lean on partly with this podcast is just to travel the world and meet some of these people who I've had the pleasure of speaking with on the podcast, and which would mean that I'd be going to Australia, be going to New Zealand. Oh no, don't force me to New Zealand. My greatest idea of goodness was based off Gandalf. Don't make me go where they actually filmed that stuff, right? Um, and
I
yeah,
love
so
Gandalf, by the way.
oh, do you? Yeah, he's so
Yes.
rad. Well, his ability to love somebody and just kind of accept them for who they are, right? He didn't sit there and berate Merry and Pippin and moralize to them. He just
No.
grabbed them by the ear and said, "MFers, you made a mess. Now you're going to clean this up." That was
And
it.
the way he talks about Smeagol,
Yeah.
and when he's talking to Frodo about, when he spared his life.
Just how easy it is for us
Yeah.
to cast death upon somebody. Like, well, they deserve to die.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? And who gets to say that? Yeah, I love his wisdom. It's fantastic. Yeah, he's well written. Well, Laura, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed this conversation. I always love to see where these go. Very inspirational. I like your story. I found that if we allow it, what seems to be our biggest obstacles in life, hey, I'm not worthy of love, or I don't feel like I'm being loved, ends up becoming a bit of our superpower. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so
And
many of those things do. Yeah.
yeah, and if only we have the level of awareness to to be able to see it, and that typically doesn't happen unless we raise our consciousness, which is why it's such a gift to help others raise their consciousness so then they can see. Not because I'm here to tell them what to do, because I'm here to reveal the way, and
Right.
they get to walk a path. That's it.
Yeah.
Well,
Opening that door.
if people want to get a hold of you and maybe be on the next up and coming cohort to learn from you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I actually have a phone number that they can call,
Okay.
and that is 616
Yeah.
808 4348.
Okay. And is there and so I just tossed that in the chat real quick just to make sure. Is that right? 616-808-4348. Perfect. And
Yes.
so
Just memorized it today,
I know,
about
right?
an hour ago.
And oh, really nice. Well done. And so I'll go ahead and get that plugged into the details of the video. Is there maybe a website if they wanted to do that, or is it really just best to give you a call?
I can send you the website. It's very different because I have a company that
Okay.
is supporting coaching. So they put a bunch of things together in one spot. So it's Delenta, but it's a very different kind of website name.
Okay. No worries.
So
Yeah,
I have
just go ahead and send that to me through Messenger, and I'll go ahead and get this added to and that way make sure that people can actually reach out to you. Any final thoughts?
Okay. No, I really appreciate the chat and the opportunity, and I think you're brilliant.
Oh.
And yeah, it's great to meet another EMF person. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a total EMF nerd. I'm not even a trainer. I just love the stuff. And so I figured I love to talk. I like to learn from other people. And what better way to talk to some of the most interesting people than to tap into our community, right? Our greater community, the alumni community, and then invite them to share their thoughts. And so far it's worked out really well. Met brilliant people like you as well. And I've really enjoyed my time. And well, thanks for coming on. Your story's awesome, and I am really looking forward to hearing how your cohort goes.
All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Laura. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day and don't get snowed in Michigan. I mean, heck, in Utah, we've got feet of snow on one storm. So yeah, you be safe.
Oh
Yeah.
no, you too.
Okay. Thanks.